Hello, I'm Brother Darren O'Neill, one of the church school superintendents here at the Lily Grove Missionary Baptist Church. And today we'll be looking at our lesson for July the 12th, 2020, which is entitled, The Boy Jesus. Our printed text will be coming from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 and 7, and then also in Luke chapter 2, verses 39 through 52. Our aim for change states that by the end of the lesson, we will explore the account of Jesus' experience in the temple at the age of 12. Sense the awe experienced by all those who witnessed Jesus' wisdom, as well as Mary and Joseph's angst, and rejoice in the opportunity to know the wisdom of God. I will keep in mind scriptures found in Luke chapter 2, verses 40, and it reads, "And the child grew and waxed strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him." Now, one of my great nieces, Anna, when she was born with some health issues. By the time she was 9 months old, her heart was not functioning properly as it was not sending enough oxygen to the right places, which resulted in her having to have open heart surgery. From there, she was placed on the heart transplant list because in the doctor's opinions, things were not looking good. But she had a praying mother and praying grandparents and praying family members. And by the miracles and mercies of God, she was removed from the heart transplant list. And Anna went on to grow up in her adolescent and her teenage years, and she went on and she grew physically, mentally, spiritually, and intellectually. She graduated from high school, and when she graduated from high school, she received her high school diploma as well as her associate's degree. Well, by the time Anna turned 21 years old, she had already obtained her bachelor's degree. As a matter of fact, I was talking to her one day, and I asked her if she knew a young man that went to college with her. And her response was, "Uncle Darren, I was too focused on getting my degree, so I really didn't know a lot of people." So now, let's take that up a little higher. Here, we find the boy Jesus. Most of the time, if not all, when we mention Jesus, we think about the birth of Jesus, the miraculous virgin birth. He was born in a manger. The wise men came bearing gifts, and they bowed down and worshiped him. And rightfully so, because after all, Jesus was sent to be born of the Virgin Mary. And he was the only child in history to be older than his mother. And then when we think of Jesus, we often think of the miracles that he performed. He turned water into wine. He raised the dead. He healed the lame. He gave sight to the blind, and many other miracles that Jesus performed. And then mainly when we think of Jesus, we think about the fact that he took on the sins of the world and died on Calvary's cross in our place. And then he was raised on that third day with all power in his hands, giving us the right to be saved and to be called children of God. But here, Luke talks about a part of Jesus' life that we often don't talk about. So the question that I would pose is, what should I know about a young Jesus? Our lesson is broken down into three different parts. The first part of our lesson is entitled A Time for Everything, and it is found in the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 and verse 7, and it reads, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. To everything there is a season." This is a reminder that every day won't be a good day. Life is filled with swift transitions. It's filled with highs and lows. It's filled with ups and downs. But thank God he did not put a period there. He goes on to say that there is a time to every purpose under heaven. Now, we don't have life's experiences just to simply have life's experiences. We have life experiences, but it's up to us to ask God to teach us and to reveal to us what he wants us to know about his purpose for us going through that season that we may currently be in. And when he has brought us through the season, our testimony is oftentimes, if not all, for someone who will experience a similar season that we're currently in. Now, verse 7, when he says that it's a time to rend and a time to sow, he's saying that there's a time to mourn and there's also a time to stop mourning. Because when you trust God, Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Now, here's the hard part. He says there is a time to keep silence and a time to speak. You ever talk to somebody that when you are allegedly talking to that person, you can't get a word in? If you're at home and you're talking to that person on the telephone, you can set the phone down, walk around the house and do some things around the house, and you can come back to the phone and that person is still talking. They never even knew that you were gone. But there's a time to keep silence. And then when he says that there's a time to speak, sometimes when a person is going through difficult situations, perhaps mourning or anything in life, there's a time to just let the Holy Spirit lead you as far as what it is that he would have for you to say. So now, the question that I will pose to you is that when that time comes where it's time for you to keep silent and it's time for you to listen, do you listen for understanding or do you simply listen to respond? The second part of our lesson is entitled, The Family Returns Home, which is found in Luke chapter 2, verses 39 through 40. Verse 39 says, "And when they had performed all things according to the law of the Lord, they returned into Galilee to their own city, Nazareth." Here, the requirements of the law of the Lord refers to the circumcision of Jesus and the purification of Mary, because under Mosaic law, after giving birth, the mother was seen as unclean and had to present burnt offerings and a sin offering for her cleansing. So now, after the 40-day purification process, Joseph and Mary went to Bethlehem to the temple in Jerusalem to present Jesus to God as was required for the firstborn sons. Now, while in the temple, Simeon, an elder, he looked at Jesus and then he picked Jesus up in his arms and he praised God and he said, "For my eyes have seen your salvation." Now, you and I will never experience this, but can you imagine how Simeon felt holding God the Son in his arms? What an amazing feeling that must have been. And then Anna, the prophetess, who never left the temple but worshiped night and day, she saw Jesus and gave thanks to God and spoke to all who were looking on and said, "This is the Messiah." Verse 40 says, "And the child grew and waxed strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him." Here, like you and I, Jesus experiences growing up. Jesus experienced the same physical development that we did, but there was something different about Jesus. He was not the typical adolescent. He wasn't like my brother Sean, who was a 12-year-old terror in the streets. No, Jesus was much different. Luke says that he was full of wisdom and the grace of God was upon him. I don't think any of us can make a true claim that as an adolescent we were full of wisdom. So here someone might ask, what does it mean that Jesus was filled with wisdom? Well, here being full of wisdom means that he was strong in mind, strong in intellect, and strong in understanding. And God's favor was on him in such a way that it was recognizable even at an early age. Again, Jesus was not the typical adolescent. The third and final part of our lesson is entitled, Boy Jesus in the Temple, found in verses 41 through 52. 42 and 43 says that, "And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast. And when they had fulfilled the days as they returned, the child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother knew not of it." Here we find Jesus, Joseph, and Mary at the feast of the Passover. And after a week-long festival, the entire family were on their way back to Jerusalem. However, Jesus didn't join them. So someone might ask, why did Jesus stay behind? Well, Jesus stayed behind because although his earthly ministry had not yet started, he still had ministering to do. Think about this. A preacher doesn't wait until his first sermon to start preaching the word, to start sharing the word. No, what he does is when God calls someone to preach, he shares the word as much as he possibly can. So by the time he stands in the pulpit and preaches his first sermon, he's simply fulfilling the purpose that God has placed on his life. Now here, after 3 days, when Joseph and Mary found Jesus, he was in the temple doing ministry. Verses 46 and 47 says that, and it came to pass that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. Now, doctors in this verse was not talking about medical doctors. No, they were instructors or teachers. They were teachers of the law who taught the Jewish religion. They went through special training and rigid examinations to acquire their positions. They would be equivalent today of maybe a professor of biblical studies. Now, they were well trained and educated, and then they met 12-year-old Jesus. He spake with power and passion and authority, and they were astonished because someone so young had so much insight on what they were trained to teach. Jesus did not yet say who he was, but he did give some insight of his true nature. Now, and finally, when Joseph and Mary found him, as worried as they were, he explained, "Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?" And although they did not quite understand, Mary took what Jesus said and hid it in her heart. And as for you and I, in the example that Jesus set, while we're going on about life's journey, while we're living in the dash, we must do the same thing that Jesus did, and we must be about our Father's business. Thank you, and God bless you.